Thank you all once again. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So I think maybe I know, Sikivu, you want to start off because the title, you know, the wrap-up session is where do we go from here? And is the movement, is the atheist secular movement still relevant? Is it relevant to women of color? Is it relevant to people of color? And moving forward, that is what, you know, what this session is about. And you know, I like to have Sikivu started off because, you know, this was, we remember we were all on the phone call, and this was shortly after, or maybe before, the Humanist magazine issue debuted. And when Sikivu said, you know, I really want to do a women's conference, this is what has come of it now. And we're at the end of it, the first one.
And that's why she was envision. That's why.
Yes, so we'll start with the vision.
Yeah. Vision, execution, and exuberance.
Yes.
And I'm sort of speechless right now. I'm really wrestling with a lot of different things. This is a culmination of work that we've been doing for years, and not just on the ground, being visible and being openly identified.
I'm sorry, the world doesn't hear.
Not just on the ground being visible and being openly identified as secular humanists, as atheists, you know, as feminists, but also in our everyday lives, in the interstices of being survivors, being resistors, being thrivers. And I was very moved by the powerful words and the work and the activism of Black women survivors who stepped up and talked about their experiences, being marginalized, being erased, being disempowered, and coming into the struggle in a community that has long been complicit with that erasure and with that silencing. And so, as a survivor, I wanted to take just a moment, you know, to read a passage from an article that I wrote for an anthology, which is on sale. It's by my sister activist Aisha Simmons, and she assembled a group of African descent survivors and activists dealing with child sexual abuse. And I wrote this piece called The Coiled Spring First Grader Deep Inside, and I began by saying, why should we believe her? She's not a white girl. Hers is not the life story that the media makes visible as gospel, tragedy, and redemption story. If she comes forward, she could jeopardize her family, its livelihood, and its standing in the community. Besides, the real issues that we should be concerned about are racism, deadly force, and the military presence of police in our neighborhoods. Rape and sexual assault are white preoccupations that distract because, quote, if you love your community, your ass will be silent. In the toxic litany of messages that Black female victims and survivors receive about sexual assault, this last one is one of the most soul-killing and the most deadly. I've written frequently, or less frequently, about the shame and disassociation I still feel toward the child who it happened to. The Coiled Spring first grader nestled deep inside, the one who loved handball, the swings, Electric Company, and Golden Legacy comic books. When I was sexually abused as an elementary school student, there was no language, there was no program, there was no messaging that existed to make my experience visible. On the block, in our neighborhood, silence was required for daily survival. Silence meant allegiance to Black men and boys splayed in the white man's greater scope. It meant tacit recognition of their greater suffering, their greater historical sacrifice. Even now, as the political landscape has shifted with the white feminist mainstreaming of the hashtag MeToo movement, which was created by a Black feminist, Tarana Burke, for Black and Latinx girls, and as critiques of campus rape, rape culture, and victim blaming inform mainstream discussions about sexual assault, the specific context of Black girls' experiences is absent from national policy discourse. This is why we're here.
Yes.
This is why we're here. This is a safe space. This is safe harbor. This is a resistance space. And it's an incipient space that we want to continue to perpetuate and to build and reinforce. But a lot of us are burnt out, we're tired. We feel, as Rajani said, that we are constantly having to educate misinformed, colonialist white minds to try and disrupt white supremacy, second in, minute in, hour in, day in. The shit is exhausting. So we're asking for the community, particularly women of color, feminists, who are doing the work, trying to resist, but also to heal and develop critical spaces for self-care. How can we do this together, collaboratively? We want to have an open discussion and a dialogue. We want to support, for example, the words of our sister who said that she wants to write. She wants to publish. She wants to disrupt this canonical regime of white, heterosexist, capitalist, patriarchal oppression in the publishing academy. In the very corridors of power that has perpetuated this ideology that atheism needs to be this enclave that's exclusively devoted to disrupting the evangelical, reactionary regime of anti-science, as opposed to looking at how that pertains to social justice and mass incarceration and homelessness and the violent misogynist disruption of the lives of black girls. This has all been embedded in our work day in and day out. And so we're here to basically reclaim and disrupt the space of white supremacist, capitalist, patriarchal, heteronormative oppression that has been normalized within the white regime of atheism.
Your mic wasn't on, but that's
Okay, I think that was
okay. Cool. So I'll just turn this off. So yeah, in these past 8 years that I've been active in this movement, I have had, like I said earlier, the honor of encountering and meeting so many people of color, especially women, who were doing this work. And as people of color, we navigate a number of things. We have to navigate, like Sikivu said, the white supremacist lens of not just in the movement, but overall. But we also have to deal with the internalized issues within our community. Whether it is, and we have dealt with a lot of it within the Black atheist space in particular. I tell you that some of the worst experiences I've had have been with other Black atheists. And this is a space where I will say that I'm not lying to you. But there's a number of reasons for that. And the three of us here, we can sit here all day and talk about some of the stuff we've experienced with some of our own. And especially other women. And like I've said before, especially as an organizer, you have not cut your teeth in this movement until you have said, fuck this shit. If you have not wanted to drop everything and say, I give up, you have not cut your teeth in this. But what keeps me going are the number of women that I have had the good opportunity to not have only seen work, but who have become sufficiently a part of this movement as a result of what we built. I remember when I first met Candace, and she was working on the Ebony Exodus project. She did that as a result of encountering Black non-believers. That was one of the catalysts. Having us tell our stories, and having that vehicle to provide that Again, we weren't waiting on it to happen. We weren't waiting on it to happen. And to the credit of many in the community, there was definitely some good acknowledgement of historic Black humanistic freethinkers, etc. But of course, the narrative is primarily those four horsemen that everyone holds so near and dear. That we now know they are human beings, they are flawed. But having and knowing that it isn't just we are doing this for the people who came before us, but also those who will come after us. Because we are thinking about future generations, even our own children, the children of the communities that we are building. We are now having children. There are people who are building relationships. There are people who, again, are being encouraged and empowered, and they are of all ages. And as they continue to deconstruct the narrative and also the pain of leaving religion behind, we have to be strong, no matter how hard it gets. And many of us have. And there are so many of us who, again, we're in these spaces, maybe individually, or maybe two at a time, or a few at a time. But it's good for us all to come together to see how powerful we are. When we were designing the program and I was looking at the lineup, look at how powerful this is. And not just simply women of color, but also the subject matter and the things that we deal with and how we handle it and how it is solutions-based and how we can be solutions-based, not just speaking about the problem, but also what we can do about it. And we have the power to do that. It isn't just about waiting for it. It's about what we can do, but also to enlist the help of those who say they want to see things change. And again, there's a recurring theme: putting your money where your mouths are. That's always going to be important to the work that we do. And if it is truly important to you, and if it's truly important to us, this is what we must continue to do. So it is relevant. This movement is relevant because we make it relevant. We have to continue to make it. We will not be silenced. I don't come from a space of silence. I wasn't raised to be docile. I was not raised to be this person who just sits quiet and does nothing, especially if something bad is happening. Many have tried, they failed. And we want to make sure that others who try to do this to others fail also. And this is the institution that we're building. And it must continue from here on out. And through all of the trials and tribulations that we've been through, the fact that we have been able to come together and see past, but because, like what I said before, everyone ain't gonna make it.
No.
It's okay to understand and know who we can work with and who we have to say bye-bye to. And that is whoever you are. That is whoever, because it's a lot to stuff, and there's a lot of stuff to unpack. And we're gonna have to continue doing it no matter, it is tiring, but it's a matter of trying to sufficiently build up the leadership that we know is there and to continue to support each other, even when we know we're not going to get it from other spaces. We just have to continue to, just to provide it for each other. And again, not because it's something that doesn't exist, but that we knew we had to develop it and bring it out. And this is what we're doing here, starting. It's already started, but the culmination was this weekend. And it will just continue to move forward. And that's what we have to continue to do.
I don't know the last time I was a docile, obedient kid to my parents. I don't know. But this quote that I live by, and I make it my point to accomplish this in some manner every day. Well-behaved women seldom make history. It is my job to shake the table and piss somebody off. Because when I was docile, when I was quiet, no one took me serious. I came into this community docile, and it resulted in 2 blog posts that went viral, where a white man lied his ass off on me. But fortunately, the majority of the people didn't believe him and dragged his ass to the proverbial depths of hell. Okay? At that time, it was at 2013. The fact that all three of us are here now is not an accident. We came together because of one individual who sued me, by the way, for $50,001. An atheist, a black atheist. A black woman atheist sued me for $50,001. And I'm still paying off my lawyer bill. Okay? She lost twice. So my exuberance was shot. And this event was just a shot in the arm that I needed to bring my exuberance back. I'm thankful for her because us three were never to be the friends that we are today. And we rose above circumstances that could have caused us to turn against each other. But on our womenofcolorbelief.com website, I have on there that we synchronize our powers for good. And that's what we've done. I am ecstatic, I'm exuberant to be in the presence of you all because I'm honored that you took us and our project serious. I would not ask how many people bought tickets because I was scared. I was exuberantly frightened, if that's a possibility, okay? I was happy that this was getting off the ground. I was happy that we were attaining sponsors. I was happy that people were hitting that going to our conference. I was happy, but I was scared because even though I believe in Sikivu, I believe in Mandisa, I've been disappointed too many times in this community. I've been disappointed by people who said they were for us and in turn unfriended us, blocked us, and maligned us. I am in Michigan, and I only do, and it's a huge secular community. I only deal with one secular community in Michigan because of the prejudice and bigotry within our community. And let me tell you all something. Now, white folk, I know y'all done took a beating this whole weekend. And the fact that y'all keep showing up, kudos to y'all. Okay? Kudos. But I'm here to believe that you guys stay because you know this shit is true. Okay? Now, I'm not talking about the individual white folk who have taken their own people to task. I'm talking about these white people who want to slide up in our DMs and want to co-sign our shit, but won't do it in the public. They won't take them to task on Twitter, but you think your little covert co-signing of our words is doing something for us. Let me tell you, Rajani. Let me tell you, Southeast Asian, y'all the shit. Because between you, I mean, everybody was. I'm just because I have been indoctrinated to believe. I have been indoctrinated. With the images that I've seen on TV to think that you guys are docile, these perfect. So when you said Google that shit, I said, well, goddamn. I'm listening to Sandra go off. The fact that I could see me and you see us, we have this chord and this running theme of we are here and we're not taking this shit anymore. Yeah. And one thing that stuck out that you said is accountability. This is why we kept promoting this event because we're holding ourselves accountable. This is what I do for myself. I make my declarations public so I can hold myself accountable. And you shouldn't have never said hold you accountable because, honey, I'm gonna hold you accountable. Okay? You're gonna be like this bitch. Everybody do it one more time. Okay? So I am happy about the success. That first night when you guys started coming in and registering, I could not talk. And I felt so bad, but I was so overwhelmed and I felt like I was going to cry because I'm like, what the fuck, these motherfuckers is really coming up. But I have to also pay homage to Mandy because we work full time. I have 4 grandkids. Like my plate is really heavy. And Mandy has done most of the footwork. Okay? I'm not going to even front. Mandy has done a fucking ton of work. I'm not saying that because I give credit where credit is due. That I'm not a money person. I cannot approach anybody about fundraising. I will swallow my tongue. I couldn't even. If I was broke, I couldn't ask for $1. I just can't. But she has that gift, and I used to be on the speaking circuit, and I'm tired of the same lies. I don't have that mentality where I can just listen and smile and go, oh, yeah, okay. Mandy left her job to do this full time, and I don't know how she does it. Why she does it, how she does it. There's some kind of a defective mutant gene that's going up and down her bloodstream, because I'm telling you, this is not for the faint of heart, because we have been lied to, maligned over and over and over, and they don't take us serious. But I have a feeling after this conference, we're going to be fucking taken serious. Yeah. Because the bar has been set high. So I have to wrap up like I had to wrap my cousin up. So we're going to open the floor for questions.
Thank you all so much.
Okay, Sharon?
Yeah. Have y'all thought about the archiving of it in all the different cities that you represent, and archiving right now, like in libraries? So, one of the ways in which you preserve your stories is to archive it in libraries, so future folks can come in and research it, and that's one of the best ways. So I'm always telling groups and movements to archive their stuff. And as women of color, we are not archiving our stuff. So think about that.
So have our own digital library.
Yeah, and
repository.
then entrust it to like in Atlanta. You can entrust it to the Auburn Avenue Research Library, and folks will come in, and it's just a way to get people to talk about, to put the issue out there, because we don't think about women of color and being atheists. So,
Well, I'd like to thank Aaron, who has been doing the videography. And so hopefully it definitely starts with recording our presentations. That's a fun. And I'll tell you what, if someone else asked me right now if I'm going to write a book, I'm going to scream. I'm almost just on the same level as Rajani about writing. I mean, I do write for my Patreon that I had started when I resigned from my job. And if y'all want information on how to support that, I'll be more than happy to give it to you. I also have a Venmo and Cash App as well, if y'all want to support my activism. And if y'all want me to speak somewhere, that's totally fine too, hit me up. But yes, that is an important part, and I think that with authors like Candace, with authors like Sikivu, and the authors that are coming behind us and along with us, hopefully we'll be able to get those works in the research library, because there is sufficient research that is being done by people of color that are atheists and humanists. So it's also a matter of pointing them in that direction as to what they can already find. So hopefully, and as we continue to develop that community part and also the catalog of the events that we do, then we'll be able to catalog and put that and archive it.
Yeah. And the other thing we want to emphasize is that although this is the first of its kind in terms of bringing together women of color, secular activists, I mean, we've been doing this work for, collectively for the past 7 years. We've been convening secular social justice conferences, blackout conferences, the BN conferences. In LA, we've done, women of color beyond faith panels. We've done things with BSLA, which Liz, so brilliantly documented in her presentation. So those are other historical documentations and records that we're going to be archiving as well.
Yes.
What are your 3 top things that you actually need? It's like, what do you need to get this organization up? Just what do you need that's going to help you out? Top 3.
Money, time, commitment.
Okay.
Or money. But yes, absolutely. Yes.
We're still burned out.
Yeah, come on, Sikivu, I'm trying to make this fun. But yes,
if you're going to commit,
yes.
follow through.
Yeah.
Because there's no point in you committing knowing good damn well you have no intentions of following through. Because what happens every time there's a project announced, we get all of these hands of participation a year in advance.
Mm-hmm.
9 months, you still pretty much got 90% of them. 6 months into it, no one's asking. 3 months, a month away from the event, silent, crickets. But then when the event is going on, you get these inbox messages or these posts. What's going on? Your ass should have been here. Like I said, I ain't TiVo. I'm not replaying shit. So that's it. If you're going to commit, just follow through. And with all the events, we have installment plans. It's not like we're charging an arm and a leg, where some people will pay out the behind to attend secular events. We take all of that into consideration, and still we come up with the same issue. So I think that's the biggest problem, is following through on your commitment.
And I really think that, because I know definitely a big thing is people who have left the church. They were very exhausted and exasperated by the amount of money they were giving to these institutions, and they were not getting sufficient return on their investment. I guarantee you, if every member of our Facebook group online gave about $5,
Just $5
a month, that would give us a sufficient working budget to be able to continue the events, to continue getting the research and doing the things that we need to do, and not just saying, oh, well, just give it to us because we're trying to, we're not supporting some lavish, some overly lavish lifestyle that unfortunately the community still continues to perpetuate. So at least just taking us, that time, money, that small, committing and taking the time to even the smallest amount for a number of people would make a huge difference. And y'all know, anytime y'all need me, I'm there, just like Bridget. Whenever something, and that's what community building is about, being there for the little things that people may need. And I say that is one thing that perhaps the churches may have somewhat of a leg up on, somewhat, not much, but just being able to, for us to have those resources that we need would really help, and then getting the people to do it.
Yeah.
It's that makes a huge difference. Yes.
Speaking on the financial part, because I'm just bad about actively doing something on your Patreon. You just take it out every month, and I don't see it, I miss it. So can we set up something, centrally where it's kind of automatic?
On BN's PayPal to donate, you can click make this a monthly contribution. It is that simple.
Okay.
Yes.
I didn't know about that little
Yeah. On most of
I miss it in my life. I'm doing it.
most of it, yes.
So
Yeah.
a lot of it did a little thing in, so I'm like, oh, I didn't get to donate, so okay.
Yeah, there is a monthly contribution option
Okay.
on our website.
Okay.
So,
And
yeah.
then can I just say really quick that I love y'all.
Oh. Yes.
Thank you so much. And I never really get to talk to Sikivu, and I just want to say you're my quiet storm. Every time I'm in your space, you have this energy that I need, that I don't know I need sometimes.
I got that from you as well. It resonated yesterday when you presented.
Really?
That's why I wanted to have a one-on-one.
Thank you. So, and we don't collaborate on this right there. We're close to each other, so we're gonna do this.
it's so important to support that.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's how this new atheism industry, you know, blossomed into this international monster. Okay, with the four horsemen of the apocalypse as the standard bearers because of their books, and because people were touting their books, you know, as being, you know, the canonical, you know, exemplars of what atheist discourse is. And just imagine if we were to harness our power, you know, as fellow women of color, you know, writers, artists, documentarians, you know, it would be amazing. So that's what we're here to do.
So I wanted to say first, thank you for all the work that you put into this. And this was a really revolutionary experience. Like, coming to see the speakers, you guys made excellent choices. The topics were really interesting. So thank you for all that hard work. Also wanted to ask, because you spoke about specific challenges, and we're a very new group within the ex-Muslim community, the secular Muslim community. And I'm wondering how many of the challenges that had to do with commitment and people with funding there was some sort of background of racism, as opposed to people just being shitty and flaky. Well, you know, like, so I'm curious, so that we can think about ourselves when we're addressing funding for our events.
I'll speak on the commitment and sustainability piece. The problem that we had with Black Skeptics Los Angeles, local group, but you know, we do national scholarship, fund development, and youth leadership, is I think that there were a lot of folk that were very tentative about doing social justice resistance organizing, you know, and making that tacit connection, you know, between, say, the fact that we have a majority homeless population that's of African descent, and some resources, you know, to redress homelessness are coming from organized religion and evangelical indoctrination. How do we push back against that? You know, how do we create sustainable institutions, you know, that are going to disrupt the patriarchal heteronormative, you know, narrative of, you know, policing Black bodies, you know, from a Black church perspective, and again, provide critical resources that unfortunately a lot of those extremely oppressive authoritarian church institutions provide to folks, you know, that are coming out of the prison system, you know, that are coming out of foster care, you know, that are being sexually abused in prison pipeline. So we had a lot of resistance, you know, from folks that were still sort of grappling with their own retreat from organized religion, in terms of we need to make the next step. It can't just be we're coming and we're gathering in solidarity, you know, as anti-theists. What's the next step when we're looking at, you know, the very real and very deep institutional and systemic inequities that African descent folk are confronting in our everyday communities under apartheid in South LA? That was our emphasis as BSLA, and it was fucking hard, you know, to get people to make that leap with us. So that was one issue. Another issue that I think is across the board with all three of us is resistance to Black women leaders. I mean, this is not something that's peculiar to, you know, the secular atheist context, the quagmire. Okay, there's constant patriarchal pushback against, you know, Black women stepping up, leading, disrupting, dismantling. I mean, that's an international virus, okay, that we're dealing with. So these are just things that I'm quite sure you've encountered, you know, as ex-Muslim women of color that you're going to have to navigate.
I want to give an example of what I experienced in Michigan. I was approached by a white organizer to bring Sikivu to Michigan. So I'm like, fuck yes. Let's get Sikivu here. Hadn't met her yet, read a book. I'd be down if he didn't delegate everything to me to get the shit done, even though it was his idea. So, okay, he was an alumni of U of M. He was going to put Sikivu in this cinder block dorm-looking conference room. I said, you fucking, we got the African American Museum in Detroit, which is glamorous and beautiful. And it's for Sikivu. So I called to make the arrangements, talked to the other organizer. This group has like over 1,000 members. You know what he told me? Oh, my members aren't going to drive to Detroit. Well, they drive for the Opera House. They drive to see the Red Wings. They drive to see the Tigers and the Lions, but they won't drive. They drive for the culture and the museums, but they're not going to drive to come and see Sikivu. And I shelved it and left all of the groups. This is what we encounter on a regular basis. I don't deal with, and the one thing as women, get this indoctrination that we received of what a woman should do. If it doesn't feel right, speak up. And it's okay to be angry and it's okay to be loud. But the fact that they were willing to treat Sikivu as second class and throw up in a center block looking conference room because you got free because you are an alumni? No, sir. So these are the things that you have to be willing to take a stand on. Because I didn't know Sikivu personally at that time, but I knew she was better than the damn center block room.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say real quick, it's a matter of, again, knowing the difference between what people say and what they do, because I have seen a lot of folks who have led the online charge of being, against, racism and injustice, but yet it doesn't correlate in their everyday lives and their everyday actions. They can talk it all day long, but yet when you're dealing with them privately, it's something totally different. And unfortunately, you run into a lot of that as an organizer, and you kind of have to just, you take a deep breath and then you keep going, because you're going to run into a lot of that. And unfortunately, it's just like, I'm not surprised anymore. And I'm fortunate to have had an opposite experience in Atlanta when Sikivu was brought there. One of our supporters, it was a white woman. She basically got the space. She basically financed almost everything. We covered things on our end, but it worked out so much better. It does make a difference sometimes where you are, and again, knowing the individuals and getting to know people and really seeing how they are. There are some that are going to be more shitty than others, and you appreciate those who actually step up to the plate and do what they're supposed to do.
I have a question about NONES nuns. How much percentage in the colored people in the United States nuns? Your estimate, the target group to increase the NONES nuns, which are overall the United States is a large group, but I'm interested to know how much that is in the colored group.
Oh,
first of all, sir, it's people of color.
yes. Well, right now that information is still being qualified because
The other way around, people of color is a proper.
Yes.
Colored people.
The question is, so what about the
established.
number of people of color that are nuns? Oh. Now that information is still being qualified because as Pew Research has been able to ascertain, there are more black millennials and more black folks and people of color that are leaving religion that may not necessarily be documenting it. But that's changing. So they're working on it. And the Black Non-Believers has had the opportunity to, American Atheist is now coming up with a new secular survey that we hope more people will start to, that will start to fill out. And there's another, visit the Secular Coalition for America table about about numbers on that too. So it's changing. The dynamics are changing. More folks are leaving religion behind, but it's just a matter of now us being able to sufficiently be able to qualify and gather that information. Yes. Okay. Last two, because we got to get ready to. Oh no, the laundry.
Okay.
Two things. I don't need to take up a lot of time though, but in my experience with ARMS projects, having a YouTube channel, it's a kind of a blessing and a curse when you're talking about social justice because YouTube comments are horrible. But and I think all of us already know that. But have y'all thought about doing a Women of Color Beyond Belief YouTube webcast and corresponding Patreon because just having a Patreon, I find that bloggers don't make as much, because I blog too, don't make as much as YouTube channels. And you could host it, and women of color who can't afford to go to conferences could hear their stories or tell their stories. And that's one. And two, I wanted to thank you for providing this space, because I've been to a lot of conferences with my husband, and I have some of the same experiences that you do, of the resistance to social justice and talking about racism. I have social anxiety, and it's difficult for me to do public speaking. And Bria's cousin talking about having to overcome stuttering, and women focusing on what women talk about. And because when you talk about it in a general audience, a lot of times the same tactics that abusers use to shut people down, the public will engage in. Like as you know, they'll say they'll accuse you of being racist for talking about racism. All of those things to shut you down, and I've experienced those things too. So when I get asked to speak in a less I guess in the regular secular community, like if they want me to talk about being an East Asian or a secular, there'll be, of course, people in the like looking at this audience. I see a bunch of supportive faces when I'm talking. But in other audiences, sometimes you see someone's like thinking your pain is funny, you know, and also with the separation with women, talking about mental health issues. A lot of times people are gaslit with their mental health issues, that they're crazy, especially if you're a woman. And to see everybody being accepting and warm, and I've been there, because a lot of times you can't understand somebody else's experiences, even if they're trying to tell their stories. If you haven't experienced them themselves, and trying to talk about racism in the secular community, a lot of times people will look dubious, skeptical when you're talking, argue with you about whether you misunderstood a joke or something. Like, I understand when my friends are joking with me about race, and I'm not stupid, or you know, I know the difference, and I know when somebody's trying to mock my ethnicity, and the condescension. So thank you for the space. I felt more comfortable speaking. I guess.
Good. Yeah. And in those questions, you actually, now I am a huge proponent of bringing people together in person. Yeah. And I also have another rule. Don't read the YouTube comments. Yeah. Don't read the comments. Yes, they can be very trollish. Yeah. They can be very, problematic. But also, this is why these spaces are important. There is nothing more affirming than seeing us all in person. And sometimes the internet and online can be a bit too impersonal. And so I think that's something that we must consider. That is something that we could consider. But I personally advocate for more of us being in these spaces in person, because that's where you really, really get to see the heart of people and where they are.
And the work, too.
Yes. Yeah. And in spaces that we can create for ourselves.
Yeah.
Yes.
Quick question. When you, as leaders in your organization, how do you juggle between creating personal connections and sort of having to separate yourself as leaders and not get into the drama? So, for example, one of the things in BSLA that I really admire about what Sikivu did is that we have meetings and she's gone. And what I admired about that was that she wasn't interested in the gossip and all the talk, as we say in Trinidad, the old talk, and what she did and all that stuff. Some of us did that. But as a leader, Sikivu raised the bar and said, basically, we're here to work, we're here to collaborate, and we're here to be positive without actually saying that. So I'm just wondering, to the audience, who want to organize? What are your suggestions, or how do you navigate that? I know it's always a struggle.
And you set rules and guidelines for that, and then there's a time and place for everything. I don't mind gossiping every so often. Sometimes we have to. We have to let it out. It is necessary. No one is, we're human beings. We feel, we get angry about things. But knowing when is the time and the place to do that is what distinguishes leadership factors. Like, I'm not going to sit here all day long and gossip about or talk negatively about everything, because this is not the time or place. So knowing when and where, and also outlining those boundaries and guidelines to the other members and other people does make a difference. I love tea. Spill it. I love it. But I can't spill it with just everybody. Okay? I don't know you and I don't trust you. But if I got a little spillage, I know my shit ain't going nowhere. Okay? But the tea I love is the kind that is Schadenfreude-ish. Okay, that's the tea I like. Where your pedestal, that tea, pedestal. That's the kind of tea. I'm not here to gossip. I'm not here to, I will shade you. See, I'll do that to your face. But I'm not here the tea is a nice distraction from the shit we go through. Okay? So, but at our meetups, we don't do that. That's my right hand. Right there. She'll tell you, I am no nonsense. Okay? We done had a couple of people try to usurp, try to make it a black power. Got the wrong motherfucking meetup. Because we're women, and they think they'll try to usurp. Now, we don't even gossip about that. We cut it off immediately, and you get to stepping. But when I want to talk about it, guess what this motherfucker tried to do? My shit ain't going nowhere, okay? So yeah, I like the tea. I will lick it up. I might add a little saccharin. But you never know. You never know that I spill it. You only know because I just confessed it. You don't know who I'm talking about.
Don't be a real friend zone.
We do.
And it doesn't disrupt the work.
Right. And one more thing.
Never get in the way.
We are, as you can tell, we are 3 different personalities here. We each bring something to the table. Now, there may be, Sikivu may interact in a way that I would not, and that doesn't take anything away from the way she does, or even Bri. Now, there may be some things that some people may be able to come up to me and talk to, and that's okay. I may allow a little bit of leeway. Sikivu may not allow that, and that's fine. So it's also a matter of people getting to know who we are as well, and sometimes knowing how to navigate those boundaries. And it's a matter of reading each other, reading the room, reading each other, and knowing when to cut certain things off. And sometimes we may handle things differently, and that's fine. We are not, again, we have never been a monolith. That's a recurring theme too amongst women of color, amongst black women, and that is okay. So we're going to end it here because we're going to have a few closing remarks from the MCs. Frank, I see your hand up. You can ask us a question afterwards. So, thank you.
After.
Okay. Yeah, we'll do it after. We'll do it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you all so much.